Are you ready to beer thunder? In the left corner, weighing in at 357,000 cheeseburgers, it is the F4F KMS, the cream of the crop that will rise to the top, the Rafale Eater, the greatest plane to have ever graced 13.0. In the right corner, weighing in at absolutely nothing, is the collective IQ of everyone that willingly picks Denmark at top tier, because holy hell, I have a lot of opinions about this map, and I have a lot of opinions to share with everyone, and hopefully there's enough time to do it before I, pass out on my floor or, do something else or just get completely bored of this, because we're back in top tier. I'm back in the F4F ICE, because as much as I hate this plane, I actually do like it. The thing is abysmal, but because it's abysmal, it's a little bit more fun to use than just taking the best plane for the BR all of the time and, actually having to care about what you do. And the other thing is as top tier has matured, as the multipathing changes have matured, as the Eurofighter and Rafale meta has set in, I think we've collectively lost some brain cells, to be completely honest. I think that the 60-meter multipathing change is one of the great paradoxes of kind of WarThunder sim community stuff. Because if I had told you 6 months ago or whenever the changes came that I would be a big advocate for BVR fighting and not hugging the deck and not having the dogfight, I would say that you're nuts. Also, if you had told me with 100% honesty that most people would prefer tiny maps like Tunisia or flat maps like Denmark because they could still multipath on them, I would agree with myself, because I think that was one of the points that I made, but I'd still be in a little bit of disbelief. And because I am in a little bit of disbelief, we're on Denmark, and we're gonna play the F4F ICE in kind of the opposite way of the way that I would normally play it now. Because normally I would go up and I try to sling my missiles down into people, but I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna do the thing that everyone else wants to do. I'm gonna hug the deck. Yeah, I'm gonna force the merge. I'm gonna dogfight, and I'm gonna do the thing that everyone still more or less wants to do. Like, it's really weird. I really grapple with this, because if you read the rhetoric, if you read what people claim to want, and then look at the number of games and look at the number of players and look at the way that people actually play the game, I can tell you that 90% of my recent kills in probably the last 3 months are dudes at low altitude, dudes that are still trying to multipath, dudes that don't notch, and that is, overall, it's fine. It's a viable tactic, but it's also, when I go back to, I'm like, why did we even reduce it? If everyone still wants to play this way, why even reduce it? Because at the same time, where the current active player base wants to play mostly on the deck, mostly wants to try to force dogfights, I think, because I can't verify whether or not everyone plays Denmark because of just multipathing. I feel that is the case, because every time I fight people in Denmark, they are going straight to multipathing, and the argument that because there's carriers on the map where you can spawn on the carrier and do naval ops, there's not a lot of F-14s on Denmark at any one time for top tier. There's not a lot of carrier fighters on Denmark at top tier at any one point. So I have a hard time believing that. At the same time, I feel like the people that argue that we just need better maps, we just need bigger maps, we just need this, I almost don't believe them, because the reason I don't believe them is because Denmark, Tunisia, and Sinai are objectively, in my opinion, the shittiest possible maps to play at top tier. They are flat, they are no terrain, no cover, limited spawns. Denmark is terrible. Denmark, the best spawn locations that you can have result in 4 out of 5 spawns concentrated in one corner of the map, and then one spawn off on the other corner by itself. And usually the whole entire game basically happens on that individual spawn that's by itself. Everyone flies in a straight line to that spawn, shoots a bunch of missiles at each other, then turns around, goes back to their base, and the map itself is basically segmented into, instead of being like one very large map where everyone kind of spreads out, is actually 2 very, very small maps that play like 2 parallel alleyways where maybe you kind of cross over in between them. It's garbage. And it's garbage that people keep choosing. And when people choose the garbage, they then complain about the aspects that make it garbage. So for instance, on when you do get the top right spawn, when you get the one spawn that's off by itself, and the whole game happens there, what happens to me oftentimes is I will get pushed to my spawn. Some guy will be shooting at me as I'm taking off. I will counterfire, and maybe he gets forced defensive, maybe he gets killed, and then he respawns at exactly the nearest airfield. I'm already heading towards it. He's locking as soon as he takes off. He's trying to shoot, and then I'm shooting at him again, and he dies again. And eventually what happens is, almost no matter what, on Denmark, you get pushed to your spawn. And then people ask, like, well, why is there spawn camping here? Why are you spawn camping? It's like, well, because everyone is playing on a postage stamp sized map doing exactly the same thing. And when it comes to spawn camping, I'm not opposed to it. I do a lot of it myself. That is just one of the realities of top tier. People look at RWR pings, they fly towards them, they pick the radar contacts that are viable, and then they shoot at them. There is really no good way around that. Even if you make the maps bigger, the only thing that you are doing is kind of increasing your travel time. I think that's what it amounts to. Also, if you just make the maps bigger, assuming the game could handle it, I am not entirely unconvinced that we could add a whole entire, like, high fidelity simulation of all of Europe with PvE and everything, and people would still pick fucking Denmark. We would pick Denmark because the objectives are present and they are very close to the majority of where people are playing. Because if you're playing the blue side of the map, if you're playing the bottom side of the map, your objectives spawn in front of your runways most of the time. Denmark, as far as maps go, is the map that I probably have the highest amount of ground kills on in the A10. I've had over 105 ground target kills with the A10. And now keep in mind, the A10 is very good insofar that it has a bunch of bombs, a bunch of glide bombs. But on a 128 kilometer map, it's on Sinai, it takes a long time to get to your objective. But because this map spawns your objectives kind of next to your airfields, at least for one side, it's a little bit easier. It happens a little bit quicker. It happens a little bit faster. The same thing goes for maps like Tunisia, where they're small. At any one point, during an event, I see a lot of, like, Winter Stalingrad top tier, which is abysmal. It's tiny. It sucks. It's really, really bad from the aspects that, if you read the thread about multipathing changes, about making radar missiles relevant, about my beyond visual range combat, you would assume that those maps would fall out of popularity. That was one of the things that I assumed, is that Tunisia, because of the multipathing changes, would be too small to play and that people would just not prefer it anymore. And it's really not the case, because 60-meter multipathing is not reliable. It's not perfectly reliable, but it's reliable enough that people still rely on it. And notching it's not hard. I don't think notching is hard. However, because of angle gating, because of the things they implemented probably a month and a half, 2 months ago, is harder than it used to be. It is a change that satisfies people that want the game to be more realistic, higher fidelity, etc., etc. But also, keep in mind, I do keep track of a good number of players. I do keep track of who's playing what. I do keep track of a bunch of random stuff that doesn't make any sense, because like I have like visual autism. Like I was good at doing like trivia in high school, just because like someone could be like ask a question, be like General in North Africa 1942, and I'd be like, there's one of three. You got Wavell, Montgomery, and Rommel. Just pick one and call it a good answer. That kind of thing. Like I have that kind of like brain rot. But I do pay attention to the way that people play and who plays what. The guys that advocated for the multipathing changes, predominantly now, don't play the game. They don't play the game more, and they got everything they wished for, by the way. They did get 60-meter multipathing, and they did get angle gating, because if you go back in time, if you go look at Reddit, the WarThunder sim thing, when the gigantic chaff bug happened where chaff just didn't do anything, those guys, two of them specifically, I would think it was Apollo, and his name was Sky King at the time, but now it is American Mac. Both of those guys were ecstatic because they thought that chaffing active radar missiles was too easy, because they went for chaff, because they locked on chaff, that it ruined the game for them. Well, angle gating is here. You now can't completely just brute force chaff away a missile. And guess what? Apollo doesn't play anymore. And Sky King, the last like 3 times I've seen him, have been on Tunisia doing multipathing at 13.0. Where basically those guys don't play the thing that they wanted to, because as it turns out, making the game BVR-centric or potentially BVR-centric didn't cause people to adapt. A lot of people just didn't adapt. A lot of people assumed that they had already adapted and that they would have the advantage over the rest of the player base, and that has proven to kind of sort of not be the case. And one of the reasons that it is proven to not be the case is because of my red team suffering. My red team suffers. Well, red team did suffer, and it did make red team technically better, but I think that that might be kind of a false narrative. And the reason I think it's a false narrative is if you play blue team, if you play the game currently, if you don't play against the red side super squad, so if you're not playing against all like the bozos in my server and Nimble server that are all squatted up together, that have been kind of grinding top tier for, I don't know, the past year on red side, you're going to have a pretty even across the board experience. You're going to have some guys that are good, you're going to have some guys that are bad, you're going to have some guys that do some real dumb shit, you have some guys that do like half of a smart thing, but really the top tier players that I would consider to be kind of like very good, very strong now, are limited to probably around, I'm going to call it like 10 people that I know, but in reality, we'll scale it up to 30 because there's 20 other people that I don't know. There's a Russian community, there's different communities where other people are doing kind of the same thing. Like there's a couple of guys that I personally don't know that do give me a hard time. Like for instance, the other day playing a game, I'm like, okay, blue team has to suffer. We gotta win. And some fucking dude named Shepherd X in a Typhoon's running radar off using IRST. He's got like a little bit better situational awareness than I do, and he's like whooping our ass. Even though he's on blue side, where, you know, blue side players suck. Blue side players are terrible. Blue side, everyone on blue side sucks. I don't think that's the case. I think that's kind of a self-congratulatory, circle-jerky narrative, and I fed into it, by the way. I promote this. It's in my server, but also there's a level of like self-awareness when it comes to it, where it's like, hey, let's back off. Let's try to be a little bit more objective about this and see what's actually going on. And with the being objective part of it, the blue side right now is not going to predominantly have all that much fun, because one of the things that happened, one of the kind of grand unifying theories of fuck that guy, is that the people that I play with, the people that kind of have practiced top tier for the past year, have a lot of animosity towards blue team players, a lot of animosity towards the dudes that shot missiles at the runway, dudes that told them that the SU-27 with its old flight model was fine, and you guys were just complaining, the radar was fine, everything was okay, you guys were just had skill issues, and America was only dominating because that was realistic, because America spends the most money on their Air Force possible, and Russian radars are supposed to be bad, where those guys, as Red Side has improved, have not made any kind of effort to switch to playing Blue Side. On the other hand, I do keep track of some players, and what I have noticed, and what I've kind of verified through some StatShark statistics, is there are a lot of guys that played Blue Side last patch, where when Blue Side was the best, that's what they played. And now that Rafale and Eurofighter exist, they are playing those planes. For instance, I looked at Greek Air Force's stats. His stats go literally from gripping F-16C to playing nothing but Typhoon. He has played more or less nothing but Typhoon since the patch, probably about a third British and then 2/3 German. So he's basically showed up like, how do you do, fellow Red Side mains? Well, welcome to the team. I'm Greek Air Force. Da, la, la. So the narrative, though, is that Red Side players are just inherently better because they're Red Side players. There's a lot of caveats I gotta add to that. There's a lot of I don't know if I actually believe that. At the same time, I think the most realistic thing is to look at it this way. My saying right now is that yesterday's F-16C mains are today's Rafale mains, because that's basically one of the trends that I've noticed is people that were okay to mid in the F-16C are grinding the Rafale, and they're probably going to end up playing Rafale. And I would say probably maybe about 2-3 weeks, a month after this video comes out, if the trend continues, if the same people that we recognize, if the same people that were shooting missiles at the runway in F-16C, that were saying, Red Side just doesn't know how to play the objective, if they continue to grind to Rafale and play Rafale, or Eurofighter or whatever, a lot of us that have the option will switch sides. And part of it is petty, but also the other part of it is it's not fun to just waffle stomp people all of the time. If you are a competitive gamer, just waffle stomping without any brain power is kind of boring. There is a reason that I don't have an F-15C video yet, because when I do try to play it, or when I used to try to play it, it was boring. Yeah, I'd go out, get like 2 or 3 kills, and the game was over. Same thing with F-16C, all of that stuff, where it's just not as fun. This is also one of the reasons I'm flying the F4F KMS, and why I'm dogfighting other people on the deck. Why I'm doing it in a way that is not really super intuitive. Like, this plane, objectively speaking, is not good. I should not be doing this good at this tier. I should be crying. I should be suffering. I should be hating my life. In this game, when I am playing the F4F KMS, I'm outnumbered. And I'm not like slightly outnumbered. There's a point where it's like 1 versus 5. And probably 2 or 3 people are bombing, so it's fine. But I am still winning gunfights in a plane that is objectively probably the worst possible matchup for any other top tier. Because the F4F, the ICE, has no advantages over the F4E. This is an F4E airframe with no HUD, a better radar, and AMRAAMs. And the AMRAAMs are kind of mitigated by the fact that we're playing on Denmark, the most perfectly flat map that you could possibly play on that is not Dover Strait. That's like the one other map that is even more abysmal and flat as this, which is in some ways, I could be like, it's sad. Why does U.S. players suck so bad? They suck so bad that blah, 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 add the F-22. And yes, it is their fault that they suck. It is everyone's fault that they suck. At the same time, when you spent the last 2 years of your life sleepwalking into a victory, it's not surprising at all, to be honest. At the same time, when all of the try-hard players congregate onto one side, you end up with a little bit of kind of whiplash. Like, I don't really run into a lot of F-16 players where I'm like, this guy's a threat. Like, I have reached the point where I think the F4F ICE, it was worse when it was the only top-tier plane that Germany could field, but because it's no longer the best plane that Germany can field, and it's no longer forced to fight at 14.0, it's no longer forced to be, like, you're not forced to, like, have to put up or shut up in this plane where you have to carry against a horde of everything. You have enough players on your team now, most of the time. You have enough capability in the form of the Eurofighter that people will at least stick around, because it doesn't feel for, like, the average, like, player that, you know, the Eurofighter is completely outclassed by everything. With that being said, when it comes to Eurofighter stuff, Eurofighter drama, holy shit. I have some opinions about that, because we just got blown up on a runway. That's a perfect example of, like, why fucking red team mains just hate blue team just with a passion. Like, this is why people are not in a hurry to switch sides. Where it's like, we gotta make him suffer, like, even more, where it's like, fuck him, fuck that guy. Got blown up on my runway, and, like, I'm literally playing a plane that is bad, and I have the Eurofighter, I have it in my back pocket, I can bring it out at any time. I'm going to bring it out probably a little bit after this, but it's one of the reasons right there, it's like why there's so much animosity. With that being said, the animosity really shouldn't be directed at just the team. It should be directed at kind of like the individual players. And speaking of animosity, like, when it comes to people being haters and blah 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 blah, I am not a very popular person in Sim all of the time, which is fine, because I don't try to be. I am an obnoxious fucking asshole most of the time, especially against more experienced players, because, like, my kind of, like, philosophy is like, well, if you're experienced at Sim, you should have to fight other experienced Sim players. The same thing is, if you are someone who plays in a squad in Sim, guess what? Squads should fight other squads. If everyone constantly tries to respect each other's boundaries and make sure that everyone has a good game as long as they're, like, best buddies, well, that just turns into, you know, randomized pub stomping, and that's bad. With that being said, we do the Red Side Super Squad, the Zov Squad. We do a lot of pub stomping, so it's kind of me getting upset about that is a little bit hypocritical. But I mean, we could be worse. We could have been the Blue Side Super Squad for, like, the last 6 months and made sure that nobody could even play the game on Red Side. So I don't know, kind of cuts both ways. Also, at the same time, sometimes part of the Red Side Super Squad does switch to Blue Side and play against the Red Side Super Squad to, you know, just see what it's like. But in all honesty, most of us have had the experience of solo queuing, the experience of interacting with people where it's like, your plane's not bad, you're just coping. The radar is not a big deal. Like, the SU-27 radar is not a big deal. The fact that the radar basically doesn't work was not a big deal for the past year or so, year and a half, I don't know how long it is, but the fact that the Eurofighter radar is kind of mid to bad, depending on who you ask, makes the plane unusable according to Eurofighter mains, and means that the plane, if the radar remained in the same state that it currently is, would need to be down tier to 13.7. People say that it would have to be down tiered when it's, like, objectively the best performing plane in the game minus the radar. And the radar's not bad, it's just mediocre. Like, the F-16C radar is better. The F-15C radar is better, but not by a lot. The Rafale radar and the Su-34 radar are the best in the game currently, but they still have some of the same problems that are related to the scan pattern. There are instances with every radar where you'll have a guy in front of you, and you're like, scan him. He's right there. He's right there. Come on. Just scan him up. And they just won't pop up on the thing. Like, I've had it a lot in the Su-27. It's really frustrating. But I've also had it in the Rafale, where it's like, that's okay. I guess I'm just gonna cry about it, in all honesty. Had the same thing happen in Gripen, F-16C. Like, there are just points in the game where the radar is just, the scan pattern, just, it skips over the target. You don't get the refresh quite quick enough, and then you're like, it's abysmal. And the Eurofighter radar it's not great. I wish it was, like, better. I wish it was just like an F-16C radar. That would have been fine. At the same time, switching between the Eurofighter and the F4F ICE, the Eurofighter's way better. It's literally just better in every single way. Just the fact that you have a HUD, the fact that when you TWS a contact, they pop up on your screen most of the time, is a huge improvement. The fact that you have better visibility is a huge improvement. The fact that you have a arguably better gun sight, more missiles, better missiles. Well, 9M and 9LI are kind of the same thing at this point. Like, one has a smoke trail, one doesn't. It's a huge difference. Like, you do not see a lot of people that played a lot of F4F ICE or a lot of Su-27 being as adamant about the failures of the Eurofighter radar compared to people that have transitioned between F-16C, which has a very, very good radar, to the Eurofighter, which has a similar radar, but it's worse because the narrow scan pattern is not as useful because it's not as tall. The area it's scanning is not as good. And you still run into the issues with the double scan of, like, it scans the top 2 times, it scans the bottom 2 times, and then your middle, your refresh rate's good, but your top is either really quick or really slow. And then same thing with your bottom. It's either really quick, if it picks up the target first scan and then verifies it second scan, or if it picks up the second scan, it has to go all the way through the whole damn pattern, go all the way to the bottom and all the way back up, and it goes, and then you're basically hitting it again and it's doing first scan again. It sucks, but it is a bug that has been introduced for over 6 months at this point. This is like one of the things that made the Su-27 and the MiG-29 radars from, like, bad but usable to bad and borderline useless in enough circumstances where a lot of people just use HMD, IRST, just use all of the other sensors and try to not broadcast their location with the radar, because it's not completely unusable, because obviously you can turn it on and it does work some of the time, but compared to the Eurofighter radar, like, this radar is good. This radar is great compared to that. Like, oh my god. Like, there are so many instances with the Su-27 where I'm just like, what the actual flippity flap? What the actual fuckity fuck? But I don't know. I don't know if I really believe this idea, though, that, you know, red side players are inherently better than blue side players. At the same time, I have a lot of anecdotal evidence, like, especially from this game. I had a lot of gun kills earlier with the F4F ICE that really shouldn't be getting. Like, an F4F should not be out dogfighting an F-14. It should not be out dogfighting an F-15C. And the thing is, when it comes to that plane, I have actually won dogfights against Eurofighters and Rafales as well. I had a clip that was, like, really cool that I posted on Reddit, and then I lost it because it's on a hard drive right now, and I don't I don't have the ability to completely recover it yet. I just don't have the desire to. Where it's like all of these people that have switched to top tier, that have switched their planes, have switched their preference based on what is the most powerful thing for the day. Like, because multipathing doesn't work well enough, people suck at the merge. People suck once planes cross over each other. They're also not good at the other thing because they make the game more complicated, and because that you can't really focus necessarily completely on BVR because multipathing still exists, so a guy just flies below multipathing and just wins. But you can't focus on dogfighting because 60-meter multipathing means that a guy shoots 8 phoenixes at you and you get splash damage, then you just cope and cry about it. Means that you kind of like have the worst of both things. Like at this point, I'm almost to the point where I'm like, either just make multipathing 5,000 meters tall and make radar missiles suck at everything and add ECM or something, or just remove it entirely. Now, the thing is, I would support removing it entirely, but also that benefits my playstyle more than it benefits literally everyone else's. So, if they remove multipath, yeah, cool, I'd get more kills per game. I would do better. Also, more people would pay repair costs and would not want to play the goddamn game, because obviously, if playing outside of multipathing, if not dogfighting, if doing BVR was the thing that everyone actually wanted, why do we still have Denmark? Why is Denmark the most popular? Why is Sinai the most popular? Why do we still have Tunisia? Why do we have all of these tiny maps? I think the answer is really simple. People thought they wanted something, they experienced it, and realized that the bill of goods they were sold was not the bill of goods that they got. So then they reverted back to the thing that's comfortable, the thing that they like, which is flying on the deck, multipathing, shooting each other in the face with missiles, gunfighting, the things that make the game seem, you know, like kind of cool.